Okay, so Lisa Raynes, welcome to the Disenfranchised. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you.
Good. Hopefully you can't hear all the wind that's blustering around me at the moment. It seems like terrible weather outside today, but you told me it is a little bit nicer where you are, right?
Yes, it's not too bad in sunny Manchester. Not raining for a change.
Very nice. And are you in the centre of town there or on the
No, I'm
outskirts?
not. I'm working from home in Gatley, South Manchester at the moment.
Fantastic. Well, let's kick things off by finding out your first job.
So I'm an architect, and it takes 7 years to qualify. So I guess my first job as an architect was with Ian Simpson in Manchester. So he did kind of like the tallest, well, I don't know whether it still is, but the tallest skyscraper in Manchester, the Beetham Tower. He did
Okay.
lots of, he's like a big name architect internationally, it's kind of well known. So yeah, that was my first job.
Wow, that's pretty exciting first job. Were you involved on that project?
No, I wasn't, but we did a lot of, we were working on like master planning after the IRA bombing. So the bomb, Manchester was bombed, I think it must have been about 1997. I'm looking
Okay.
at you, do you remember 1997?
I'd have been 14, but I can't say I was watching the news then.
Yeah, so we were working on the master plan of Manchester after the bomb. And so some pretty intrinsic kind of Manchester landmarks, I guess we were kind of starting to draw out, which is cool. I remember working on a canal marina,
Okay.
and you're just drawing lines on a plan, and then you go back like 10 years later, like, oh, it's there.
That must be a pretty cool feeling though, right?
It's
Like,
pretty cool. It's pretty cool, yeah. Yeah, I was
because
just like involved in the early stages of it.
yeah, I was going to say you're not really kind of involved all the way through the project, are you?
No,
Kind
these
of early
things
days.
take, decades to come to fruition. So, probably loads of people have worked on it over the years, but now it's involved in things like that. It was good.
Oh, cool. That's really nice. So, um, as an architect, making that decision when you're pretty young, is that something you kind of always knew you wanted to go through, or was it something you just kind of thought, let's see what happens through education and
No, I think I was at sixth form, just thinking about what to do at university. And I'd already decided to do sort of maths, physics, art, maths, physics, art as A levels. And then, I was talking to, looking around a careers day, and I think I picked out like accountancy, architecture, or actuary would suit
wow.
my A levels. And my dad was a builder's merchant, and my granddad was a builder, and he said, "Oh, be an architect. It's a it'd be a great job for a lady." And it's a 7-year course. We were in a recession at the time. He said, by the time you come out, there'll be a boom and you'll be fine. He was right. By the time I came out, the economy was booming. But in the middle of my experience, you're supposed to get like a year between kind of degrees after your third year and fourth year. It was really hard to get a job. So
Yeah, I can
scrabbled
imagine.
around there. Yeah. But architecture is really fickle. It's a really fickle industry. It's always the first to go in a recession because, kind of like that's the first thing people do is, stop building. They stop their capital projects. So architecture as an industry is the first to get affected, which is
Yeah.
why it's not so great being a lady architect. Because when the recessions hit, if you're working part-time or on a job share,
Yeah, I can
Those are the
see.
first roles to go.
First out the door. And I guess when
Mm.
you're saying part time, you're kind of talking about somebody who's maybe got children and they're part time caring for them. I guess. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
that's right. That's right.
yeah. I can understand, and I can relate to the first. Well, as soon as the recession hit, nobody builds anything. So I worked within the oil and gas industry as a recruiter, and as soon
Yes.
as that took a big price drop, in
Yeah.
terms of the price of oil, that was it. All new projects were ended, and most of my recruitment was what they called upstream, which is just the design phase of the projects. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah, I've seen that firsthand. What can happen, and yeah, it's pretty tough, isn't it? So just moving sort of back to your career, then, in terms of the types of projects you wanted to work on, did you have kind of any dreams or aspirations to work on sort of large international projects?
No, not really. I've never really been sort of ego driven. So you do find some architects are ego driven and just want to see their kind of edifices on the skyline. No, that's never been me. What I love is just kind of making people happy. Kind of creating amazing spaces for people to live, work, play in. And that's usually that's a success for me.
Okay, so do you think that's kind of partly what attracted you to that as a profession, that kind of ability to make people happy?
No, what attracted me, I think, was just the problem solve. It's as a profession, it's kind of you've got to be a master of all trades, really. It's a real problem solving profession. You've kind of got to, it encompasses everything. You've got to be able to draw, you've got to be able to explain things, you've got to be able to you know make calculations. So there's your physics and your art and your communications, and then you're thinking about society and impact and environment, and it's a really sustainability, it's a really broad subject. For me, I just like the kind of three-dimensional problem solving, kind of working, looking at an end goal and then go, right, how do we achieve that? Right, okay. And then you've got all the time constraints involved with it. You've got all the different bits of legislation and planning and building regulations and fire safety and sort of
Yeah,
random CDM and stuff like that. So you need to know your onions to be an architect. I mean, that's why kind of having the word architect, is a pretty cool thing, because you have to, or being able to call yourself an architect is a pretty cool thing, because you have to have gone through the 7 years training.
yeah,
So it's a 3-year degree, a year in industry, a 2-year postgrad, and a second year in industry, and then professional qualifications, which are, around contract law. So, and all to call
yeah.
yourself an architect. So if you come across someone who's like an architectural designer, they're not an architect.
Okay, yeah.
So the word's protected.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because
Mm.
I think we're all used to the word architect and have kind of some basic ideas as to, okay,
Mhm.
they follow some rules and draw some some
Yeah.
some designs, and that's kind of it. But the way you've described it there, there's quite a lot involved actually, and it's understandable why there's such a long learning period to get that title, as you say, as architect. So through your career, then you've from the sounds of things, worked on a few different types of projects. Have there been any specific style of projects that you've enjoyed more than others? I'm wondering if it's more kind of somebody's home, or if it's you know, an art house somewhere, or a skyscraper maybe. What type of projects have you enjoyed the most?
No, I think it is working with people and people's homes. And when I first set up on my own, I kind of wanted to do social housing, because I thought I've got some amazing skills. I want to kind of do the most good.
Yeah, that's cool.
So yeah. So that's kind of where my aspirations started. But I kind of realized that actually by concentrating in the domestic sector, so just doing people's houses, I could actually help loads more people, because it's the domestic market's really underserved by architects. It's really badly served by architects. Because if you were thinking of getting of building an extension, you'd probably just go to your builder and say, "Oh, can I have a box, please?" And not
Yeah,
actually kind of think through you kind of like what the options are, whether you need a box, what it should look like, where should your box go, can we get more light into your kitchen? A lot of people end up just building for the sake of building, and then like ruining the view of the garden or something like that.
yeah.
So, we're there to kind of like take an overview, and we can kind of foresee stuff that you can't. And I think it's really important to get an architect's input.
Yeah, I've had a couple of house extensions, and we've got an architect that we use. He's been
Mm,
in the family for years, helping with various projects. So
fantastic.
yeah,
So you can see the value of an architect.
yeah, exactly, and it's just when you have a building inspector come around, if you don't really know what you're doing and you've started some work on something, and the inspector comes around and says, this is no good because of XYZ. Oh, you're wasting so much money, aren't you, in the long run? So
Oh yes,
better to get somebody who knows what they're doing to get it sorted and designed for you. Yeah.
absolutely.
Excellent. So you talked about your own business then and starting that. How and when and why did you decide to set up on your own?
So as I said, I started out at a fancy pants architect's, but I kind of burnt out pretty quickly, because
Okay.
it's like long hours culture, and then moved around quite a bit. Just it was the nature of the industry, kind of some practices not lasting very long. And then started a family, and in fact I got made redundant whilst I was on maternity leave with my first child, because as I said, the industry's fickle,
Yeah.
and the office kind of had closed down whilst I was off. It's that fickle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so when I went back to work, I thought I'll go for a more established practice. So rather than a design-led practice, kind of one that had been around for like 100 years, thinking that they'd be more sustainable over time. And I was there for 7 years, and I had my second child there, and they were very supportive because the economy was buoyant. But when we hit the crash of 2009, again, I thought I'll take time out, have baby number three, and then by the time I come back in, things might be a little bit more settled. But it wasn't.
It-
A
it's
year later, it was a quite a deep recession, that one.
yeah, I definitely remember that. But
Uh,
it sounds like you almost have to plan when the next recession might be, as to when you might be able to have a child. If you're
maybe,
it,
maybe. Or you've just got to be able to ride out the storm somehow, keep your skin in the game.
yeah.
But the thing is I've met so many female architects who fall out of the industry at that point. You can't find a job, and so you end up doing something completely different.
It's a shame, really, isn't it? Because there's going to be a lot of talent in those people that have dropped out for reasons beyond their control, really. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you might have you might sort of turn around one day, you've taken time out kind of having a kid, and all of a sudden they're 10.
yeah,
And then it's like, right, what now? And you've kind of started to lose your foothold. I mean, that's where Pride, the franchise business, comes in, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I set up on my own out of necessity back in 2010. Who was it that said, I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt said, a woman is like a tea bag.
Okay, I've not heard this one.
Woman is like a tea bag. You can only tell how strong she is when she's thrown into hot water.
Cool, I like that. That's good.
Something like that. Yeah, so I ended up setting up on my own, and within a couple of years, I kind of got my business into shape. Because when you start, you know, we all think that, you know, because we've got a profession or a technical skill, we can set up a business. But that's far from the truth, really, you know, because, you know, you might have a technical skill, but how do you sell it? How do you find clients? How do you go marketing? You know, how do you resource it? All those businessy things that, you know, as business people and franchisors and franchisees, we kind of learn.
Yeah.
You know, so I set up, you know, I went out, was like, right, I'm going to set up on my own, I'll be fine. So I set up Raynes Architecture, because that's my name, Lisa Raynes, and just started to, you know, mold a successful business. I made loads of mistakes, loads, but you just quickly kind of just, you know, moved on without allowing those mistakes to drown the business. You know, things like cash flow. I started working for a commercial client.
Yeah.
You know, they were on a 90-day sort of payment. It was a large bill. They went under. I had a bad debt.
Yeah.
You know, I had staff. I had to let them go, you know. And
So how did you start to learn how to overcome those challenges? Because, you know, you, like you say, because you've got a profession doesn't necessarily mean you can run a business, and doesn't even mean that you have people around you who can support you, you know, because I'm guessing it's still a fairly competitive industry, you know, out there. So not so many people to turn to ask for help, maybe.
yeah, I think I just picked things up pretty quickly. So got some business support to start off with, you know, did a business plan. So I knew, you know, I didn't know what a business plan was. I didn't know what a cash flow forecast was. Didn't understand accounts. So did that, joined I got some, so the last wave of VRDF funding, and kind of joined a like group mentoring program. So kind of found a business coach, and really just started to pull people around me that were going to support me. So, you know, sort of really good like web developer,
Yeah.
you know, got some videos made, got photographs done, started understanding kind of graphics and branding. And it was also the launch, it was around the time of the birth of social media. So this is like 10 years ago. So it was really easy to make a big impact on social media, you know, back then, because there were only three other architects on Twitter. And all the journalists were like, "Oh, who are you?" And you know, that was amazing. So you know, I could just really easily see the link between kind of PR and business growth, you know, and marketing. I made my own website. I first of all, I used like a WYSIWYG website, Weebly. So, you know, what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
really easy website to build. I could throw as much content on there as I wanted to. I'd just come out of, kind of working for the people where everyone's like, oh, you can't say that, you can't do this, you can't do that. So, you're constantly having your creativity, held back. And I was like, I can do anything. And I'd had fun with it. So built the website, got social media, and then just started learning those lessons from sort of getting, when you get stung by a bad debt, right, how am I going to handle this? And I realized that I was working with domestic clients, and they paid well,
Yeah.
and they were predictable, and they the values were lower than commercial. So if I lost a domestic client, it wasn't going to sink the business. And I kind of realized that even though I had this aspiration to kind of work on social housing, that I was actually getting more reward from helping kind of Joe blogs around the corner, because you were helping them,
Yeah.
people who couldn't afford to move, didn't have sort of loads of cash to hand. Well, if we do this, this and this, you can realize more value. And so rather than when I was in practice working for other people, we'd build buildings for basically pension funds.
Yeah.
And edifices, buildings are kind of they are visual interpretations of money and investment and the economic growth. Really, they don't. The reason why a skyscraper's on the landscape is because the cost to value stacks up, because there's a hotel provider that wants to come to Manchester, or the market can sustain a penthouse of £1 million. It's and if no one's buying anything, you can't build.
Yeah.
So you have all this knowledge, and it's like, right, okay, how can I actually help anyone? And it's great to be able to use those tools to be able to help people.
Yeah, it sounds like you're feeling like you're having more of an impact now. You're helping somebody. You can almost, like you can see the whites of their eyes, right? It's not somebody in a tower, somebody somewhere that's just kind of chucking money at something, and you're working with their staff. This is
Yeah,
the person you're
absolutely.
going to have the impact with. It sounds good. So
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we don't do like footballers' houses or second homes, or because what's the value in a gold tap that no one's going to use for 9 months of the year? It's
yeah, no, that's cool. It makes sense. So in building this business, then you talked about quite a lot there, really, as to the things that you had to consider and think about, and the support you needed to kind of build around you. I guess that costs a bit of money, right? To
yes.
get that all in place.
You make mistakes as well along the way.
Yeah, I think
So
that's something that is important to highlight, because not many people, when they think about starting up a business, think about that support. They think, okay, I'm just going to have to work it out myself. And okay, there's some people out there who can, but not everybody can. So they have to buy, the services of a web developer, or somebody to write your contract for you, or whatever it is that you need for that business. It's it's probably more costly than people think. So yeah, really interesting point you brought up there. So how and why did you find franchising as a way to expand that business then?
So I think I'd kind of pretty much nailed the business, my business, around 2012. So after a couple of years, as in terms of, you know, this is how I'm operating, this is my, you know, route to market, these are my customers, this is how I'm going to do it. It works, it's profitable, it's sustainable, that sort of stuff. And I thought, and I'd been chairman of Women in Property Northwest, sort of around 2009 to 11, and then I was chair of like an RIBA local solo practitioners group sort of shortly after that. And so I kind of started to see the issues of kind of women in the industry. So I could see that like 50% of university entrants were female. So at university, there's 50-50 split between men and women. On the ARB register, that's the Architects Registration Board, 25% are female. And on the RIBA, which is the our chartered body, the Royal Institute of British Architects, 17.5% are female. So you can start to see those numbers just falling down. And then when you start looking at kind of leadership and seniority and the gender pay gap, you know, women just disappear. So I knew that that I was starting to hear stories of, you know, women who'd also lost their jobs and couldn't get back on the, you know, back on the career ladder, and that I'd found a solution. So really, you know, it's like, right, this is the solution, this is the problem. Let's put two and two together and let's look at how I can, you know, kind of teach people how to do this. And yeah, so that was the precursor to the franchise. And it was like, right, what's the mechanism to roll this out now? And I think I started to read business books. Well, not very many of them. I read E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, and I read Nigel Botti Rules. He set up the Entrepreneurs Circle, and yeah, and I kind of they both talked about franchising as a business model, and just looked into it.
Cool.
And then that's it. Once you're on that kind of franchising journey, the rest is history, really.
Yeah. So did you have thoughts about franchising before you kind of discovered it in this way? You know, did you kind of know that there were businesses like yours out there that had been franchised?
Not really. No. I came across, I think it was 2015, I bumped into Linda Price, who was had set up Swim Time as a franchise, and I picked her brains, and then she said, "Oh, come along to an EWIF meeting," and it was like this whole dark world of franchising. We're like, "Whoa, come over." Come in.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that I'm sort of going around, obviously talking to people from the franchising world, and I never really thought that something with a profession behind it, like your business, could really be something that's franchised. But the way you talked about the problem in the industry and this being a solution, it's almost quite obvious now that of course, why not? You know,
like there's a lot of franchises in the care industry. You see accountants, you see will writers. You know, why can't an architect franchise a business? I think that there was, or I don't know whether another franchise, Architect Your Home. I've got a book on my shelf. I don't know where they're up to or whether they're running as a franchise model anymore. But you know, I knew that there had been something there.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, why can't a service industry a service industry or profession franchise? I mean, what we're doing is it's providing a structure and the business support and the branding. I'm pointing at my branding, kind of like my curtains, which is my
You're living the business, aren't you?
Yes, yeah, and I've got a logo behind me, so I don't know if this comes out on Spotify as
Maybe
well.
not, but it'd be on YouTube, so that's
It's on
fine.
YouTube. Yes, I'm just. Um. So yeah, I never had any qualms. I mean, we operate a very kind of slick, structured model that just takes architects through kind of a process, because you know it is very process driven in terms of the getting clients and then turning them into a build is very process driven. The what we don't do is prescribe how we design.
Yeah,
That is an architect's skill, or their flair or their creativity. That we want them to bring that to the table, and their knowledge of kind of how to build as well. They need to have that, and understanding the importance of once an architect draws a line on a piece of paper, they're liable for it. you know
yeah,
the professional indemnity. So we need people who understand that and respect that. But we provide all the support, like this is how to do a fee proposal. What the fee that you state is up to you. We'll give you guidance, but we've written those terms and conditions.
yeah.
So
So,
you don't have to reinvent the wheel each time.
so I guess all that support that you had to go out there and find, you're kind of just you're packaging that up,
Hmm.
but delivering it from a place of knowledge within that industry or that sector, whatever you want to call it.
That's right.
Because I'm guessing you're speaking to a web designer who perhaps didn't know much about architecture, right? They didn't know
Yes.
much about the industry, and speaking to a business coach who again probably didn't know too much about that world. So
Hmm.
actually what you're packaging up as a franchisor for people who are looking to start their own business is all of those services, but coming from the perspective of somebody who knows the business inside and out.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're always working on our process. So, it's 10 years of kind of intellectual property, tweaking this, tweaking that, adding in another touch point with the clients there, sort of having a little, sort of 30-minute chat service that you can just offer out to a client just to kind of sort any troubleshooting kind of thing. So it's just always ironing out the process, and it's not 100% perfect, but each time someone comes on board, they kind of add to a little bit more to the process. So
Yeah,
and I've got two new joiners coming on board.
excellent. Exciting. But is that I was going to ask you, how have you found being a franchisor and helping people to build their own business?
It's brilliant. It's really rewarding, kind of taking people who are who may be a little bit shy or unsure of themselves, and then just building that confidence up and just seeing them blossom. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. Do you ever kind of think you wish you'd employed staff maybe and built out a practice that way rather than going down the franchise route? Or
It's a different, it's definitely a different industry. I'm kind of at the verge of kind of stopping you know, probably need to start looking at slowing down on stopping practicing myself to concentrate on the franchise. It is a different industry. It is, you know, management and people management rather than sort of architecture and designing. But, you know, we can bring that in as a consultant role, I guess. It's a different form of business structure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So what impact do you feel like your business is now having on the industry, on the architectural industry?
I think it's interesting. We're getting called upon kind of as a talking head quite a lot by the, you know, the RIBA and the architectural press. You know, I've the RIBA do you sort of we're starting to be respected in the industry, which is great. You know, I guess, you know, we've been around for 5 years now, so we're not flashing the pan anymore.
So what has the last year been like for Pride Road, and how has that compared against other architectural practices? Maybe I'm thinking about the last 18 months or so with COVID and kind of the mini recession we've had.
Yeah, we were very quick to pivot, and being part of a franchise, obviously, you know, I could call upon resources and then kind of very quickly distribute them. So it meant that, you know, my franchisees were fully supported. We talked a lot about how we were going to change and all that sort of stuff. And it's been busy. It's been really busy. Yeah, other architectural practices, I think they're also extremely busy.
Yeah.
I think building across the board is busy. But you know, it's going to be about balancing sort of demand with skills. So I know that, you know, Raynes architecture has survived for 10 years, and it's been, you know, through that sort of economic turbulence. And so what you tend to find is domestic clients kind of want to extend when the economy is buoyant, and they need to extend when you're in a recession because they can't afford to move. So there's always demand in our sector.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I guess that's different, like you say, when you're talking about kind of larger projects, right?
Mhm.
That's probably more volatile. So yeah, it's interesting. I was anticipating you saying actually it might have been more difficult for the industry, but now think about it, I've had a real trouble getting hold of concrete and building materials. So yeah, it
Yeah,
makes sense. Makes
yeah.
sense for the domestic side, certainly. Cool. So I want to ask you if you've had any funny, strange, or interesting stories, just to change the pace now a little bit.
I knew you were going to ask this question, and I don't think I've thought of anything funny. Um, I, I think during lockdown we had to find ways to kind of amuse ourselves at a distance. So we did a bake-off competition on the computer for Christmas. It was just really nice. we we all made gingerbread houses, and we got like our technical associate to judge. It was just a really lovely activity. We're kind of like, you know, monitoring each other all day and talking to, you know, checking in, and that was really lovely.
Was that between you and your franchise partners or
Yeah,
franchisees? Was it? That's quite cool.
yeah, between the franchisees. And then we've got a canal boat, and it was moored in around Northampton. And we decided that that was like the centre of the country for us all to meet. So I think mid-COVID, when there was a slight relaxation, we're like, right, let's meet on the canal boat. And it poured the whole day. And we were doing some like a quite a tricky journey with a load of locks. But it was just so good to actually meet up in real life, you know, because, you know, we've been doing weekly Zooms every week. You know, so you've got that level of support, but you can't beat that face-to-face contact.
No, definitely.
In
But it's
fact, they're all coming up tonight, so I keep on getting little text messages going, "I'm on the train, I'm in the car, I'm on the coach," and so they've set up they've set up a WhatsApp group without me. Like, hold on.
oh,
So, but it's really cool.
that's
So
good. They've built a support network for themselves, and
yeah,
yeah, that's what it should be all about, really, isn't it? Is supporting each other, and yeah, sometimes you might not want the franchisor involved, I guess, in some conversations, but um, yeah, that's to be expected, I guess. So okay, that's cool. I like that. I like the collaboration and the fact that you are so close with the franchisees.
you know, we are small. I think the difference between an architecture franchise and, I don't know, a baby orientated class is that, you know, the life of a project in our system, it could be 2 years. So, you know, it takes quite a long time to see, you know, to start to see the business model work.
Yeah,
Because it's, you know, someone's in the you know, clients are in the process for 2 years, whereas, you know, in a baby class or something, someone signs up and they come to a class and you get the money, and then
yeah,
they come to the next class, you know. So it is a very different kind of model to a normal franchise. So, you know, I'd say that's probably why we've had quite slow growth.
yeah,
Um, but, you know, we're sort of, the model works and
yeah,
there's a need for it. And so, you know, and architects, you know, I think to join the franchise, you need to be an architect. That's our baseline qualification. You need to be an architect, a UK qualified architect. You know, so there aren't millions. It's very niche. And also architects kind of they don't like being sold to. They
yeah.
like to find things themselves, and they like things that are, you know, kind of trustworthy and has that experience and expertise, and it does take a while to build that up.
Yeah, no, it's understandable, and from your perspective, you can't take anybody on, so it's about trying to find those individuals that are in the right moment at the right time,
Mm.
and see that it's worth investing in a franchise. So there's quite a few challenges you're facing, but I really hope you have some success, or more success, should I say, more success,
I will.
because it's quite clear that you live in the business. You've got all the stuff there in the background, but also your core drivers for making this business a success and turn it into a franchise is making an impact. So that's making an impact on people's lives in terms of their houses and where they're living and the spaces that are in, but also in terms of making an impact on the industry, especially for females within the industry, and for people that want to be have a little bit more control and not have to leave the industry. So I think it sounds like a really great business you've got there, and yeah, I hope it continues to grow for you. Now, before I'm going to let you go in a second, but before I do, I just wanted to ask you one final question about um, the franchising world. So anybody who's looking to buy a franchise, whether it's with Pride Road or otherwise, what's the one piece of advice that you would give to them?
What? So you talk about someone looking to buy a franchise.
Yep, buy a franchise license with a brand. What one piece of advice would you give them?
Oh, um, oh, that's a really hard question. I'd say do your due diligence. Speak to other franchisees. Um, you know, I'd speak to the successful franchisees. You know, I think, um, I'd say, you know, if you are a franchisee, don't forget it's your business. You know, it's going to be down to you to make the business work. And you know, if you haven't got the drive or the desire, then it's not necessarily going to work for you. So you need to have a reason to kind of get up in the morning and do it. So if you look at successful franchisors and franchisees, you know, they'll be kind of doing it, living it, wanting to do it, enjoying it. Go and have a chat with them.
Yeah. See if you match up to them. See if you're that same sort of person as them. Yeah. That's a good idea. I like that. Yeah, perfect. Well, look, Lisa, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really nice getting to know you better and to hear your story and to learn about the architectural world from my perspective anyway. So thank you very much for sharing your time with us.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.